man, what's up? What's up? Welcome in. It is GC Live. I am Wes Mitchell. He is Chris Clark. A Tuesday episode of the show, a National Signing Day early signing period preview episode of the show. This is GC Live, brought to you by Affordable Medical Equipment. You can check them out at affordablemedicalusa.com, 803-926-1493. They are, of course, home of the game day chair, which would make a great Christmas present for you or your significant other. And even if you buy it for your significant other, they'll probably let you sit in it sometimes as well. So get the game day chair for Christmas. Promise you will not be disappointed. Again, I'm Wes Mitchell. He is Chris Clark. Getting ready for National Signing Day tomorrow. It has snuck right up on us. We talked about it a little bit yesterday, but today will sort of be our official so sorry. The chat the chat gets me. So Phil on YouTube. Golly. You know, I think our show, I mean, I'm biased. I think our show, as far as being interactive and being a chat as we're talking, is great for this platform. I sometimes wonder what the people who listen on the podcast are thinking as they watch, because they're not seeing the interactions and stuff. But Phil, after Chris told us yesterday that he eats lunch at 11, Phil says we better hurry up or it's about to be Chris's dinner time.
Close, man. I'm in my pajamas right now, so after the show, I'll go ahead and retire to my quarters for the night.
Oh man, that got me for some reason. So, no, I appreciate y'all. Appreciate everybody watching, listening, whether it's on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, or after the fact on the podcast or live directly on the homepage there at Gamecock Central. We're sort of going to go into what to expect from signing day on Wednesday, maybe talk a little bit about some of the guys who are signing with South Carolina and any news that has sort of come about since yesterday. I would say first and foremost, man, one of the worst kept secrets sort of finally came out. I think that was yesterday. Everything has sort of run together at this point, but Shiloh Sanders announcing, well, I guess he didn't actually announce anything yet that I've seen, but it did. Once you hit the portal, the news gets out very, very quickly. And Shiloh Sanders, South Carolina safety, who was a redshirt freshman this season, announces his transfer from South Carolina, at least as far as the portal goes, is officially put in the portal. And the expectation is that he will end up at Jackson State with his dad, Deion Sanders. And again, something, Chris, that really was not unexpected at all.
Yeah, something that we were tracking. We did get, I guess it's okay to say this now, Wes, we can confirm this was the player you'd written about. You referenced, people were guessing on that one. And I got it in my Ask Chris thread on the Insiders Forum this morning. Was that the player? Can you tell us now? So, yes, it was. We're not going to tell you all the pre-written stories that we have in our shadowy, mysterious portal of our own that we have, that we shoot stories out from. But Shiloh was one. And so, yeah, not a big surprise. We had heard this, right after the Kentucky game, or maybe the day after. I can't remember exactly when it was. But in the hours after the Kentucky game, it sounded like this was a possibility. And, with the coaching change, with his father taking a coaching job, again, not done, that he's ending up there. But that is most people's expectation with Shiloh Sanders.
Yeah, and even in the hours before the Kentucky game, I would say that week before, it's sort of been a foregone conclusion. That, and obviously they knew who we were talking about, because when everybody started asking Shiloh, is it Shiloh? Is it Shiloh? We didn't respond to any of those chats or those comments about that. But, I think we've talked about this, man. I think Shiloh could have been a solid player for South Carolina. There were flashes this year. You'll remember we talked this offseason, or as the season began, I think we sort of said, hey, we didn't talk about Shiloh Sanders enough this offseason, because he ended up actually playing quite a bit this year, especially as South Carolina's secondary, ended up getting banged up. You had the opt-outs, and he was on the field, but there's some upside there. There was also room to get better, obviously, as well. And I think if you look at South Carolina's team, we knew there were going to be some guys who move on. We knew that. I think as we saw with the opt-outs, maybe it was a little bit proportionally skewed, I think, towards DBs a little bit, just because Muschamp was so highly involved with DBs, and the fact that Muschamp is obviously gone. I think when you look at transfers and opt-outs, there's a reason that it was skewed towards that position.
Yeah, exactly. And anytime there's a coaching change, there's going to be, like you said, Wes, various reasons for guys to leave. And even when you don't have a coaching change, it's not atypical to see attrition for maybe just a guy just wanting to play more, a guy wanting to get closer to home, or needing a change of scenery. And so, for Shiloh, it was, like you said earlier, man, even before the Kentucky game, the lead up there, the rumblings had started about him maybe being out. And it would seem to coincide with the fact that not only is South Carolina undergoing a coaching change, but you also have his father taking a job somewhere else, which is, most people's expectation in this situation that he'll ultimately follow him there. So it won't be the last. That there will be more transfers unless something crazy happens. It's sort of unforeseen. The expectation is there will be some more for various reasons, but that's sort of one of the dominoes that fell. Obviously, Mikaya Scott, entering the portal, and the original thought was that he would enter the portal and sort of see what was out there, but the potential was there for him to come back. But quickly found a home at Georgia Tech. They sort of swooped in and were able to get him. So we'll see where it goes from here. That's a common question we've had. How many guys are they going to lose? Who's it going to be? We don't know yet. A lot of these guys you got to keep in mind, still potential for a bowl. There's still coaching changes to shake out. And so we'll just have to see. Obviously, for South Carolina, it's important that they keep sort of a core group of guys, which right now they seem to be doing okay with, at least this present time. But that's something we got to continue tracking, over the next few weeks.
Yeah, somebody else at Georgia Tech landed, Keon White, Chris, someone that we were tracking pretty heavily as someone to keep an eye on for South Carolina in the transfer portal. Someone that had really done a great job at Old Dominion and had some major Power 5 offers. South Carolina was going after him as a grad transfer, and is someone that I think they would love to have. And Georgia Tech has done a pretty good job so far of maybe getting some guys in that can maybe help them in the portal.
Going a little bit bigger picture, more broad with that point is, you mentioned Georgia Tech. And so you look at where South Carolina is as a program right now, obviously on the field and recruiting. Not the 2020 class, it's a really good class, but this 2021 class, even if the staff was intact, was, a backslide from that, right? The 2020 class was almost miraculous because they signed 2 5-stars and a bunch of other really good players after going 4-8. Got a bunch of guys in early, were able to hold on. A lot of those are going to be really good players, I think, at South Carolina. But 21, and even when you look ahead to 22 with some in-state guys, some key out-of-state targets, right now it's a tougher go. And so Shane Beamer's walking into a situation at South Carolina with all that on his plate already, but then you look around and it's tough because you've got Georgia and Florida. Florida's improved a lot lately. Georgia's always going to recruit well. You've got Clemson, who's a power in the upstate, your biggest rival. There's not a ton of recruiting carryover there, but there can be some. Now you've got schools like North Carolina in the state of North Carolina, which a few years ago, it wasn't as much of a factor that you had to worry about them. Now you do. You had to worry about them in 2019, in the 2020 class and in this class and going forward. And then you have to worry about Georgia Tech now. It used to be in Georgia, it was you worry about UGA, you worry about Clemson, you worry about Auburn, you worry about Florida, a bunch of the other Southeast schools. But now you got to deal with Georgia Tech too, because they've done a good job under Jeff Collins of branding, of doing a really good job in the recruiting department of getting out and digging in on some more guys. And they've done a better job of becoming a factor on some of those guys that maybe, whereas in the past, if there's a guy that fell below Georgia's board or fell below a couple other guys' boards, or even if you could go head to head with those, now you just have another contender in the state. That's not to say Georgia Tech's a power or on those other schools' level, but it's just one more that you have to contend with and deal with. And so that makes it even tougher.
Yep. So let's get into everything for tomorrow, Chris. And I think maybe the only thing newsworthy between yesterday and today would be the fact that Omega Blake, and we're going to go into some guys who are signing on Wednesday versus some guys who are maybe waiting, and the uncommitted kids maybe you need to have an eye on. But the biggest news, I guess, would be that Omega Blake went from being a February signee to now planning to sign tomorrow. He tweeted that out on Twitter last night that he'll be signing at 10 o'clock in the morning. I guess not that completely surprising, even though it is a change. And I had sort of wondered, man, would there be a couple of these kids that were either encouraged or even just as they sort of sat down and thought about it, would would they maybe just decide to go ahead and sign and get it over with? Now, from what I've heard, I was checking on the fact that TJ Sanders maybe could be doing the same. I actually talked to TJ a few hours ago. He said he is still planning on February. So TJ Sanders will be a February guy. Last we heard and checked, John Darius Morgan will be a February guy. Omega Blake goes from a February guy to being a December guy. He didn't explicitly say, I will be signing with South Carolina tomorrow, but I think that is a safe assumption for South Carolina.
Yeah, I think that's sort of understood. There are definitely some schools that have continued, throughout the season, communicating with Omega Blake, but there's really nothing there that we've heard that would indicate a change. And the other few guys will shake out between now and February. But yeah, it's going to be a smaller group. Stephen Witherspoon asked on YouTube about the final number of scholarships, so we can sort of hit on that in the same question if you'd like. And basically, they're going to have, what does that make it, Wes? 7 guys, I believe it would be, signed tomorrow, right? From this current 2021 commitment list. And then you'll have, there'll be another, is that number wrong?
It'll be 7 or 8.
7 or 8. And then you've got a few other guys that are possibilities from the uncommitted ranks that we'll get into later that will sign. So one thing that you've got to consider to answer your question, Stephen, is you take that number of whoever signs from the committed group, and maybe if they get another uncommitted guy or 2 or so tomorrow, then you add 4 to it, because of guys that South Carolina brought into the program as transfers who counted to this class. And then there's some spots held over from February, but they're going to hold some spots for transfers too, whether it's a grad transfer, whether it's a guy out of the transfer portal. And that number is not known. There's not a specific, South Carolina is definitely taking 5 grad transfers or 5 transfers. We don't really know that yet. It's sort of just dependent, but they are going to keep some flexibility with numbers. They're not going to over leverage their spots and just fill up in the early signing period with just guys who maybe want to come. They want to try to make sure that they get some guys that can help in this class, whether it's high school, junior college, or the transfer ranks.
There you see the commitment list right there. And, I think, Chris, really, if you're South Carolina, there's going to be some people who maybe, especially if they haven't really followed recruiting incredibly close, and you can see the commitment list right there, that are maybe going to be a little bit upset on, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, when they see the numbers, when they see South Carolina. I mean, at this point, it is what it is. South Carolina has the 90th ranked class in the country. And right now they have 10 total commitments. So when you look at that, there will be some people that are upset. But if you're South Carolina, it does you no good to take guys just to take guys. In other words, if I made this point on another radio show, man, if South Carolina wanted to sign 24 or 21 kids tomorrow and then add it to the 4 to make a class of 25 and just sort of arbitrarily be able to say we've signed a full class, they absolutely could do that from a quantity standpoint. But they are making a conscious decision right now to not take kids just to take them, and a conscious decision to leave themselves flexibility moving forward. And I think that's absolutely the right idea. and the right approach, because as weird as it is to say, you're making sort of a longer term decision, but that long term decision for now is really just a wait a few months decision, basically, or wait till the summer decision, because that is the path to being able to potentially land a late bloomer or somebody who just has a lot of times it seems like it's kids that there's been coaching changes maybe at the school that they were going to go to, and they sort of reset their recruitment. You can get in with some high school kids that have reset their recruitment, but also the path, to the transfer portal and having some guys who can maybe come in and make an impact, namely at that receiver position we've been talking about for the last year. I feel like that's the path to being able to do that. I don't know if you would be able to get those impacts if you just said, "Oh, we're going to sign a full class on Wednesday."
Yeah, and you can look at it a couple different ways. So if you take a class that's too small, let's say you sign 10 guys in your class, and on top of that, it's not a very good class, like there's no difference makers in it, or maybe only one or two difference makers. When you look at the future, you're going to look back at that and say, "Oh, that class, that really stung." That's maybe a reason that there's a lot of holes. On the other, the flip side of that is you think, well, take more guys. Okay, well, the position that you're in right now, what are the types of guys that you can go sign in these circumstances, right? Late, even when you look at February, you're in the midst of a pandemic. So it's not like you can take hey, we'll get these guys in for 48-hour official visits face to face with the coaches. That'll sell them. You can't do that until April because of the dead period. And so that gets you past the February signing day. And then you have to consider what's available, how dug in some other schools are on some of these guys that are already committed to other schools, guys that are going to sign in December. And so you also don't want to look at it and say, well, take a class of 20 guys from the high school and JUCO ranks just to take them and fill out the roster. And then if you're doing that, you're also going to look back in 3 or 4 years and say, well, they took a bunch of guys in that class that didn't really help. Whereas in this class, given the circumstances, it's not ideal, right? But given the circumstances, what's the best way to play it? Try to keep as many good players as you can from the current class, guys that you think could possibly help, and then go out and be resourceful. Find transfers, a grad transfer, find guys from the junior college ranks that can come in and help. And then you have to balance that out for a time with some high school guys that can develop, either it's, come in and play as freshmen or develop more long-term.
Let's maybe dive into a few kids here, Chris, since we are previewing signing day, and maybe some guys to watch. We'll start with Omega Blake just because he is, like I said, the kid that actually has a little bit of news around his name in the last day or so, announcing again that he's going to go ahead and sign on Wednesday. I think, for one, never a bad thing, Chris, for South Carolina to get back in as far as that Rock Hill South Point pipeline. And you have obviously Devontae Holloman there as a head coach. You have sort of a situation there where you always, for me, you look back traditionally the places that South Carolina has gone into and been able to go out and sign players that make an impact and can help the Gamecocks. And South Point has traditionally been one of those spots. So I think Omega Blake is a good football player. I think he can help you maybe potentially at receiver or safety. But if you sort of, to me, there's even a greater big picture value here to getting back into that guy out of there. And then, looking at Omega, there's obviously, I'll steal your phrase, there's a lot to like here about Omega as a player and a playmaker and somebody who's done various things for South Point, has played some quarterback, has played some receiver. You see him here more of like almost in a sort of getting the ball in the backfield type role, and was someone that obviously South Carolina identified and wanted in this class.
Yeah, and a guy with some versatility. He's played quarterback, he's played receiver, he's played defensive back, at South Point. And so, I've been on the record with this, Wes. I really like the idea of Omega Blake as a safety long-term. I just sort of like that because of his skill set and his length. But he's a guy that, at least under the old staff, we'll have to see what the new one thinks, has been eyed as a receiver. And you would think, Wes, look, I was going to say, you'd think with the need, he draws his first look at receiver, but they need a lot of help at safety too. So he can do either. He's not going to absolutely blow you away with the straight line speed, but he's a guy that will bring some athleticism. He's got good ball skills. He catches the ball well. He's got a little bit of open field ability. He's a solid wide receiver prospect. I don't think he's going to just wow you on tape with just absolutely running past by guys or just straight line speed or, that sort of phone booth like electric juke ability. He may not bring all that to the table, but he's a guy that's been really productive in high school. It looks like he really likes playing ball, and I think is someone that can help, and he's probably going to get every opportunity given the circumstances next year.
Yep. So those of you who are watching on YouTube, Facebook, or Twitter can, of course, see it. If you are not watching, you're just on the podcast side of things, you can always go to GamecockCentral.com and watch this video after the fact. So, Chris, let's dive in before we'll go back and forth before we dive into another committed player. Let's talk about some of the uncommitted guys and maybe people that South Carolina fans need to keep an eye on. And I'll sort of start with the one I think it's safe to say they're in the best shape with right now. And that would be Isaiah Norris, someone we talked about a little bit yesterday, somebody that we played the film of Isaiah, at least as far as his fall practice goes there at GMC. But a South Carolina kid, someone that has built up a little bit more buzz here the last week or so. South Carolina officially offered him, Tennessee offered him, and now the Gamecocks trying to sort of solidify themselves in a spot to add another GMC kid. They, of course, already have Marcellus Dial committed for this class.
Yeah, Isaiah is a really interesting prospect. Talking to some people at Georgia Military over there that have coached him, they really like what he brought to the table. Now, keeping in mind, this is just based on practice and what they saw from New Mexico Military, his previous junior college, where he was in his first year out of high school. T.L. Hanna guy did a really good job there. Yeah, he drew some rave reviews for his work against Dutch Fork when they played a couple years back against Dutch Fork in the state title game. Looked like one of the better players on the field from what I was told in that game. And then had a really good year at New Mexico Military, put together some good film, and then even his spring practice stuff or his practice stuff preseason. Obviously, junior college got moved to the spring, wasn't able to play with Georgia Military as a result, but does have some practice film from earlier in this year. And they really like what he brings to the table. He's not the biggest guy. He's probably 5'11", 170, could put on some more weight, but he's got a lot of athleticism to him. He's got some twitch. He can turn and run, and he showed really good ball skills in high school and in junior college so far. And a guy that, right now South Carolina looks to have a really, really good shot of adding tomorrow.
Yeah, and I think, Chris, let's go back a little more big picture as far as needs, man. That's one of those spots we talked about losing kids. I think as far as the the secondary goes and overall numbers at the secondary. Gus Nicholas says that a certain other site has him as a hard commit to Middle Tennessee State. He is committed to Middle Tennessee State. I would not necessarily characterize that as a hard commitment right now. Other schools obviously working to flip him. South Carolina appears to be in good shape to do that right now. And Jeffrey Hicklin, we appreciate the super chat. Jeffrey throwing down the $2. Appreciate that, Jeffrey. He said, who is the best player that is a flip opportunity? I mean, Chris, it's not the exciting answer. It's not what fans are sort of loving to hear right now, but there's not really another guy as far as for tomorrow that I would circle and say there's a great shot of that. Is there always a chance you get somebody else was asking earlier about what's the biggest surprise for tomorrow? Is there always a chance that somebody just pops up and completely surprises us? Gilbert Edmond was a complete surprise last year.
Yep.
I'll put it like this. I'd be surprised if there's a surprise, but you never know. I can safely say, to go back to like the Shiloh Sanders thing, there's nobody at this current time, 2:28 Tuesday afternoon, there's nobody that we have a pre-written story for that you'd say, I've never heard of South Carolina even being involved with that guy. A complete shock. As far as best chance to flip somebody, it'd have to be right there with the same person we're talking about with Isaiah Norris. Technically a Middle Tennessee State commitment right now. I don't really think that's a very solid commitment at this time. So, but he is a Middle Tennessee State commitment technically, and would fit that bill for your question as far as he would be the guy South Carolina could flip. We had some questions earlier, and when Beamer first took over, we had some questions like, would a J.J. Jones, a Terry Ingram Dawkins, a Justice Boone, would any of those guys be possible flips? And I just don't get your hopes up on that stuff, I think is the best way to say it.
Yeah. We've got a pretty, fairly comprehensive report on the site this morning that lays out, a lot of this stuff, in some cases in a little bit more detail. But yeah, I don't think right now, you look at some of the in-state flip candidates, there's just really, in a lot of cases, not enough time, Wes, not enough time. Or some of these guys, Tyrion Ingram Dawkins was a guy that even after he committed to Georgia, you got the sense it was never over, and it wasn't. But it just, the path that it's gone down, it appears that he's going to stick from what we've heard. Justice Boone, J.J. Jones, there hasn't been much cooking there anyway in terms of him in South Carolina. So right now, I mean, that's a common question. We get that every signing day, no matter the circumstance. Are there any surprises? And that's part of what makes it a surprise, but there's nothing imminent that we've heard, in terms of something that's expected to come down, or even any whispers of, hey, watch out for maybe this or that. We really haven't gotten any of that yet.
Chris, while we're thinking about it, do you want to tell everybody a little bit about the Game Day Chair and maybe how they can enjoy the Game Day Chair with some Dead Soxy socks?
Absolutely. Yeah. The Game Day Chair from AffordableMedicalUSA.com. Not a medical chair, not a lift chair. It is just a game day chair or a super comfortable recliner. Check it out. Variety of positions, lounge position, TV watching position, the zero gravity lay flat. It is the Twilight Maxi Comfort, or the Cloud Maxi Comfort Cloud with Twilight technology from AffordableMedicalUSA.com. Go there and search for it, or give them a call at 803-926-1493. We appreciate their support of the show. Make sure you check them out too. And spoke with those guys this week. A lot of folks have said, hey, I'm going to check it out. I'm going to order it for Christmas. Make sure you do it, because if you don't, they may be running very low on inventory from what I've heard. So they're getting some in this week. They may be gone, flying off the proverbial shelf quite soon. So make sure you check it out. And while you're enjoying the Game Day Chair, make sure that you're doing so in your Dead Soxy socks. If you're on GamecockCentral.com and click on our show link, or if you're on YouTube, if you're on our pod page, make sure you click the Dead Soxy link. $10 to spend in your cart if you do that using our referral link. And you can use the code HOLIDAYPRO to get 35% off your entire order. That's deadsoxy.com, DEADSOXY.com. Super comfortable, no slip socks, boardroom, dress shoe variety, or something more casual. Check it out. Get yourself a Christmas gift and for your loved ones.
Yep. Like I said, buy yourself a gift. I buy myself a Christmas gift every single year. So it is an excellent way to treat yourself. Chris, let's move on to another. Actually, let's do another uncommitted guy, because this is one of my favorite prospects that I've run across. Has an offer from South Carolina. This is Quaymon Davis, wide receiver, another JUCO kid. He's out in Mississippi right now, Fulton, Mississippi. And someone, man, that I turn on the tape, and he appeared, and we don't know where he's headed. We don't even know when he's going to make an announcement, make his commitment. It's been actually very difficult to get information on what's going on with him. South Carolina involved, obviously. Florida State has offered. I don't know if anybody else has gotten involved in recent hours or the last day or so. But, Chris, it seems like the information has been hard to come by. But what has not been hard to come by is the fact that this kid is really, really good. Could be exactly what South Carolina needs. And I'm going to pull up the film here in a second. But there is a very distinct Deebo Samuel-esque quality here, I think, in what he could potentially bring to a South Carolina offense when you look at how thick he is and what he does after the catch, in that he is a running back playing receiver, essentially.
Yeah, that's what really stood out to me on the film is it's sort of that term, the man among boys type of thing, sort of came to my mind in watching Quay Davis on film. He's a guy that, like you said, Wes, his build is a little bit, sort of like a running back. And whether he's inside, outside, he's a guy that gets the ball in his hands. He's got really good vision and really good toughness. He just looks like a grown man out there running against these guys. So good route runner, really good in the open field. And like you said, man, a guy that's probably, what the doctor ordered for South Carolina. They need guys that can step in, catch balls, make some plays in the open field. And he seems to really fit the bill there.
And, man, I think the interesting thing here as well is so I was talking to one of his old coaches, and he played running back primarily in high school. So that's why he has that sort of running back playing receiver type ability, that skill set, is he's been comfortable running the football for his entire life, essentially. So don't know where he's going to end up, but is someone that can help South Carolina both at receiver, but you could use him in the jet sweep game. You can use him in the return game. That same coach told me that he was the best return guy he's ever coached in 10 years of coaching ball. So, I don't know what other players the coach had, but just for him to say that obviously means something and continues this trend we're talking about where South Carolina is going to go after linebackers, wide receivers, secondary, and pass rush, I think, as being the primary targets here for South Carolina moving forward. We'll certainly be tracking this. I'm trying, hopefully by the time, if you're listening to this later and you're not watching it live right now, hopefully by the time you're listening to this and watching it later on, we'll have a little bit more information on Gamecock Central about when he may have a decision and where he may be leaning, because again, right now, I don't even have a guess right now. I don't really have a great feel for it.
No, it has been difficult. He's not a huge talker. We did chat with him. I think that was last week, Wes. Hard to keep track of the days with how busy it is right now. But we did speak with him in the last several days, I would say, last week or so. And it was tough to get a read even then. Obviously Florida State had recently offered, South Carolina jumped in. And what we do know is he has been planning, to announce something or otherwise sign this week. And he is an early enrollee. So the clock is sort of ticking on that, but we just haven't heard, anything new on that quite yet. So we'll keep working it, and we'll see what comes out sometime between now and tomorrow, or even if it takes past tomorrow.
Yeah, Craig asking, is Keon Coleman still in the picture? He is going to actually be a February guy as far as signing and during that signing period. So yeah, South Carolina will try to make a run there, I'm sure. We'll see if they can, be in the final mix there with him or not. But Coleman, certainly someone that they would love to have and love to be a part of the program. We'll just see if they can do that under Shane Beamer's direction. And I think, man, not that we have any new names to give people as far as coaching staff, but that's going to be important moving forward once South Carolina puts this staff together, and once we see maybe what connections the new coaches have had at other places. Is there a prior relationship? Is there somebody that they've been recruiting at their previous stop that didn't sign early on? To me, that will be the first direction as far as what high school guys or even JUCO guys maybe end up taking up some of these February spots. Will be, as soon as we know who those coaches are, there will be some guys that that basically pop up that maybe weren't necessarily on South Carolina's radar or maybe is interested in South Carolina, but are all of a sudden on the radar because of the connections to the staff once that's made official.
Yeah, and you see that a lot. We know that Beamer's taken his time. It's been said publicly. It's been, said in some things that we've heard privately among some of the folks that we talk to. We know that he has taken his time. There's some coaches that are on his list, or maybe even some guys that he's fully planning on hiring, and maybe that are fully planning on coming to South Carolina, that are still engaged with their current teams. whether it's coming up this weekend in a game, whether it's with signing day stuff. Just the reality of the situation is some of this stuff's going to shake out after those key dates. A couple of, hinge points there. Signing day tomorrow. Once the early signing period's over, then you look at Saturday, some teams that are still playing, and we should know more after that. And we see that all the time. Head coaches, assistant coaches that get into new roles. There are guys that, like you said, Wes, are going to have relationships from there that are pre-existing, and they may carry over. And if there's any guys out there that are planning on waiting until February, that can end up paying dividends.
Yep. So we'll see, of course, what direction that heads, and we'll have complete coverage of that on GamecockCentral.com, which, by the way, if you are not a subscriber, you can use the code GCNSD to get premium access, a free trial from now until January 29th, 2021. Again, code GCNSD. If you're already ready to get on, though, you can actually use the code Gamecocks and get 50% off your first year on GamecockCentral.com. We'll have complete coverage, of course, for signing day tomorrow, but beyond that, coaching staff, once we actually know who the OC and DC are, we're going to have breakdowns, I'm sure, on what to expect from these coaches, both from a schematic standpoint and from an on-the-field development standpoint, from a recruiting standpoint, all those different things. We pride ourselves on Gamecock Central being a little bit more in-depth than what you're going to see just out there that you can find for free or on Twitter or stuff like that. So let's keep breaking this thing down, Chris. I don't know that we're going to go through the entire commitment list, but we'll at least hit on a few kids that I think are worth talking about as far as maybe being in a little bit better shape to sort of be the, I would say, gems of this class. Not that you want to say the other guys couldn't be or can't develop once they get on campus and stuff like that, but just I think a few guys that will single out a little bit. And that, for me, would have to start with Colton Gauthier, South Carolina, at least as far as rivals goes, their highest rated commitment. And another guy, I think you're seeing a trend here with South Carolina. They've been able to land highly rated quarterbacks every year for the last few years, which is what you have to do at that position. And a kid that much like, I look at a Luke Doty last year, Chris, and the fact that you had a coaching change last season. It was, basically the OC and the quarterback's coach and the guy that was directly involved with Luke Doty. And Luke Doty never once thought about leaving the South Carolina commitment class. So Gauthier, with a head coaching change, has really done a good job, I think, of being a leader of this class, of staying committed, of trying to keep other kids committed. And those are the intangibles that I think you look for in that position. Anyway, there's a reason why Gauthier is one of the best quarterbacks in the country. And those leadership qualities, I think, have sort of shone off the field, combined with what you can see right here. If you're watching, he can do on the field.
Yeah, I think he's gotten lost in the shuffle a little bit. People obviously are talking about Gunnar Stockton a ton, Luke Doty, especially at the end of the year with him getting an opportunity. And Gauthier is sort of sandwiched in between them, a little bit. And, the high school team, unfortunately, not as quality this year. But as a guy that, you watch his film, and we've seen this guy throw in person, there are definitely some things that are really intriguing about his game. He's got size, obviously. When you look at his size, he's legit, 6'4", 6'5". He's up to about 210 pounds or so. He can move around a little bit. He's not Luke Doty, which not many people are in terms of his mobility, but he can move around some. He can escape. He can run some zone read stuff if you want him to. And he's got a live arm. Like he can make the throws, the throws with touch. He can zip it in there. And so got some intriguing qualities in terms of Colton Gauthier, and he's a guy that is a quality prospect to keep in this class at the quarterback position to continue adding competition to that room.
Yeah, man, I like the way the ball just jumps out of his hands. I mean, he's not playing at the biggest qualification of school, but as far as his particular ability, this guy could have played anywhere. He, the ball jumps off his hands. He actually, like you said, he's not Doty, but he can run it. As I like to joke with him about, he actually runs it a little bit better than he's given credit for. there you see he can throw the long ball. He can put zip on it when he needs to. And he's one of these kids, man. He's a worker. I know talking to Chad Simmons, who's known Colton for even longer than we have, and just this is a kid that works his tail off, but also has some other just really cool, interesting hobbies. As far as his I think everybody needs to get away, take a little bit of time to get away from the game and sort of have some other hobbies as well. And he's just a really talented mind. He plays some guitar. He likes to fish, likes to do some other things, but also puts in the work and is able to do everything he needs to do as far as his team goes. And is actually this past week, Chris was out in California again, working out with Austin Carter Samuels, who is actually a name some people will remember, who was at Vanderbilt as a transfer quarterback a few years back and then ended up as a coach at Missouri, now is doing his own thing. So this is a kid who has put in the work off the field to sort of on top of what he's doing with his current team, but to develop as a player and as a quarterback. And I know is going to be really happy, Chris, to hopefully with South Carolina having the coaching change. He talked to Beamer. He sort of has put his faith in Beamer and what they're going to do offensively. But I know one thing he'll be very happy about with a new staff and sort of starting over is the hope that he can just have one offensive coordinator to work with, because I think he's had a different offensive coordinator the last 3 years, man. So that's always tough on a kid to have that coordinator change every single year.
Yeah, exactly. It's definitely something that that has played a role there. But he's a guy that's really progressed at the high school level. You see sort of his growth in terms of really just his size. I mean, he's continued to add weight. He got a little taller, heading into this season, and he's always had some really intriguing arm talent. We saw him throw one summer at a camp at one of Muschamp's summer camp sessions, and I guess that was before he got the offer right West, and it was a guy that was impressive when you're just sitting there watching him throw the football. So a lot of physical tools, and a guy that you think can just continue to develop, but the arm talent is certainly there. And a really interesting kid, like you said, spending some time talking with him or his dad, you get sort of a sense of his personality. And, he's sort of a marketable, sort of interesting kid. And so really, really intrigued by Colton Gauthier when he gets on campus. Be interested to watch him and follow his career.
Yeah, and I think, like you said at the very beginning, man, it's a little bit overlooked just because of the Gunnar Stocktons of the world, Luke Doty, who's already on campus, Ryan Helinski, of course, on campus as well. But this guy has some skills too. And I saw a question earlier, basically how many chairs are there in the quarterback room? Well, for one, Jay Urich is moving on to the sort of within the program but off the field non-player type role this offseason. So that's one guy that's out of that room. You can never have too many quarterbacks, I think. And that's the way the big guys do it. I mean, you bring in, and Colton Gauthier, he knows this. He understands this. He accepts the responsibility of a quarterback competition. And I think he's ready and willing to try to fight it out to start. And these quarterbacks these days just have to know, man, if you come in, if you're going into a place where there's not really competition at the quarterback position, that probably means you have not recruited very well. Because if you're going to win and play good offensive football, you have to bring in a talented quarterback every single year, or you're going to have injuries, or you're going to have a guy who doesn't pan out, or if you have two guys that don't pan out back to back, then you really find yourself in trouble.
Yeah, you do. I mean, you're going to have guys said transfer. I mean, if you sign a good quality quarterback every year, this has happened everywhere. I mean, I heard Dan Wetzel from Yahoo Sports was on Dan Patrick earlier today, listening to 107.5 in the car, and he made an interesting point about Michigan's lack of developing a quarterback in Ohio State. Ohio State's churned out some guys, obviously, in recent years under Urban Meyer, and now Ryan Day, and they got Justin Fields. They talk about how loaded Ohio State's been at quarterback that they, Joe Burrow basically felt compelled to leave Ohio State. And obviously he developed a little bit later, but he turned into the best player in the country, bar none. But that's going to happen everywhere. I mean, if you sign, people get really excited about big name, big time quarterbacks with a lot of stars by their name, with big offer lists, with big arms and talent, running ability. Those things are very intriguing because it's the most important position out there, you know. But if you sign a good one every year or almost every year, naturally guys are going to want to play. There's only one ball. It's a unique position. You know, if you're a running back, you can deal with having another guy or two to compete with. If you're a receiver, you can have a few to compete with, even linemen. And, you know, rotational positions, quarterback's not one. If you're on the bench, you're generally on the bench, right? And so if someone wins a job and they're playing well, you start looking around and saying, if I want to play quarterback, it might need to be somewhere else. And it's more of a business decision, quote, type of thing. So, yeah, you'll see that. It's a good problem to have if you can continue to stack quarterback talent. And South Carolina, like you said, Wes, they've signed on paper some really good ones. Have they all worked out for various reasons? No, whether it's been position changes or maybe they haven't been as good or whatever you want to chalk it up to. But they do have some that on paper, again, I think really have a chance to eventually be good players. And that's certainly what they need to play out to show improvement on offense, with a variety of other factors looped in there as well.
A couple of other guys we'll get into here. And I think, Chris, if you look, sort of finishing out the uncommitted kids, in our newsletter today, I sort of profiled 3 of them that I think were worth keeping an eye on for South Carolina fans. And I think Byron Young, another junior college kid at GMC, defensive end / pass rusher type, and has the offer list of, I mean, probably one of the better JUCO defensive line offer lists in the country, but someone that South Carolina had sort of, I would say, faded with a little bit when you look back at with the coaching change and sort of some other schools maybe were in a better position than South Carolina. I sort of got the impression Auburn may have been in the best shape, but then Auburn, of course, fires Gus Malzahn. They don't know what their coaching staff will look like either. South Carolina under Shane Beamer, who's been in, I was told, contact with Byron quite a bit, trying to get South Carolina back towards the top of his list. And this is a kid whose recruiting process really blew up pretty late. The offer list is extensive, so it's not just like there's some clear one school that's way better as far as football goes than the other, and it's kind of an easy no-brainer type decision. And I would say Chris, man, is sort of in that spot where you really kind of feel for the kids, because he wasn't really highly recruited out of high school, hasn't really gotten a chance to go through the recruiting process. And now he sits here with early signing period on Wednesday and really hasn't been able to actually take your traditional visits like a kid would hope to do, and has been introduced to the business side of the world with coaches being fired and let go. And now finds himself, I believe, pretty torn with some really good options, but not knowing which ones to pick leading into tomorrow. Yeah,
and you know, our gut feel, I think we probably agreed on this, Wes, behind the scenes, is while there's no like hard information on Byron Young going into tomorrow, the vibe, the feel, some of the signs seemed more Auburn centric, right? Because, you know, he's from Carver's Bay, but he has family in Columbus, Georgia, very close to Auburn. And just based on some social media activity, some things he said, he's even called Auburn in an interview with the Rivals Network, you know, his favorite school. And so there are a lot of different things there that pointed towards Auburn, and South Carolina got involved along the way. They've sort of seemed to, you know, make a move into a legitimate position where they've challenged for him. But now these things, there's some uncertainty. Tennessee's been a school on his list. They're sort of a little bit up in the air right now. No changes on staff, right? But you certainly look at it and it's a little bit of a tenuous situation. So that's another one. I mean, he's graduated. He's a guy that's ready to enroll in January, but what is he going to do? And he could, quite frankly, take more time if he wants it. So that's another one that we're going to be tracking until tomorrow, and hey, maybe beyond, just depending on how things go.
Yeah, I got a feeling, man, we could be tracking him beyond tomorrow. And I think that may be something we see pop up this year where guys say, hey, I'm not ready to commit. I'm not ready to sign. There's nothing that says you have to sign anything. You technically, even though you have this opportunity to sign, an early enroll, we've seen early enrollees just straight up enroll. You just, You sign you don't sign a letter of intent. You sign your financial documents, and then boom, you're there. We saw it. Who was it? South Carolina. Was it Ridley that Carolina landed the brief verbal commitment from, and he ends up going to Georgia. I don't think he ever signed anywhere. He just showed up at Georgia. You remember following all that?
I do. Yeah, that was an interesting one. 2016 class, right? I think that was Muschamp's first class. Georgia pulled a little bit of an okey doke there on the Gamecocks.
Yeah, so it can happen, and we'll certainly see what happens. A lot of these guys, so for logistical reasons, it would have to be sort of the early part of January. Talking to a few of the Carolina early enrollees, they've mentioned January 5th as like the quote report date for them. I don't know the official day that semester starts, but I don't know if you know it off the top of your head either, Chris, but it would be somewhere around that first week in January, second week in January, that somebody would almost have to be decided by if they were going to enroll early at South Carolina. And you would hope, maybe a little bit quicker than that to make sure you've dotted all your I's and crossed all your T's as far as the admissions process and getting all that stuff taken care of. But Byron Young, certainly one to watch either tomorrow, if he maybe pulls a little bit of a surprise and just goes ahead and does something, or if we continue to track him moving forward. And again, I get the impression, so of these three, and Real Sports Video tells us that the semester starts January 11th. Appreciate that. Of these three, I think we feel like South Carolina's in a good spot with Isaiah Norris. And then the other two guys, not only do we not really know who's necessarily in the best position, we don't even know when it's going to happen. So that will be something we'll be tracking maybe tomorrow. Well, certainly tomorrow, but maybe beyond tomorrow. One other commitment I do want to get into, Chris, before we get out of here, a guy that I've been high on for a long time. And then if you want to hit somebody else, we can. But my guy, and the guy I think is one of South Carolina's most underrated players, somebody that Des Kitchings did an outstanding job with, and that South Carolina I know is high on, would be, and it's a great name, Caleb Juju McDowell. Chris, this is a guy that I think can maybe be a playmaker type for South Carolina.
Yeah, you look at Juju, and he can probably do a variety of things. Is he a 25 carry a game guy? No, but he's someone you can, obviously he's a running back at the high school level, and he can play that position in college as well. But he may be a guy that can catch the football with you out of the backfield, or if you want to put him in the slot, he can probably be a special teams guy for you, whether it's running down as a gunner, whether it's possibly as a return guy. But good open field ability, not the tallest or the biggest, but when you look at how he's built, really powerful lower body. He made some sort of social media waves for his ability to squat a bunch of weight. I can't remember what was it, 600 or so, Wes. And now that was probably a high school squat, so a little bit, maybe, but he's put the video up of it, regardless of sort of how he did it. It was pretty impressive. So powerfully built in the lower body, sort of runs bigger than his size would indicate, and also has, some craftiness, some shiftiness to him too. So I agree with you. He's a guy that maybe should be talked about a little bit more.
Yeah, runs very hard, man. Can help in the kickoff return game potentially, and actually has I was told at one of the SEC schools camps, the summer, it would have to have been not this past summer, the summer before, he ran like a 4.4 as well. So has some documented strength, some documented speed, and is someone that South Carolina's coaches just really, really liked as being a playmaker type, and makes you feel good. I mean, basically, if you look at their running back room moving forward, that's one spot. I think if you're taking over a program, you sort of start to categorize things. Where do I need a lot of help? If you're Shane Beamer, where are my holes at? Where are my spots that maybe there's a hole, but I can hang in there for a year maybe, and I'm fine. And then where are my spots that I'm like, wow, I can build around this? And I look at running back with Kevin Harris, with Marshawn Lloyd, Juju McDowell coming in, of course, with what Deshaun Fenwick did, and some other guys you have there, you probably feel like running back is a spot you can build around, and maybe does. Travis, who is a loyal poster and subscriber on Gamecock Central, Travis asked, could he maybe be a guy you see in the slot? Chris, I don't know about you, man, but I think depending on the offense, depending on sort of how this offense ends up being structured, then yeah, I think that's something he could do, even if it's not maybe a full-time thing. Maybe you move him around a little bit. He certainly has some of that versatility that could be a kid that could do multiple things for you.
Yeah, the versatility is definitely there, and you see even at Lee County here, really good program with Coach Dean Fabrizio there. They line him up sometimes in the slot, and they'll let him jet sweep and things like that. So he can certainly be used like that, and he has good hands. He has good open field ability. So definitely a guy that can do a few different things for you, as opposed to when you think of Kevin Harris, you think, okay, this guy's a running back. That's what you think of. Juju McDowell, you look at him and you think running back, but also more of a utility guy who can do some different things.
Yeah, and I'd be curious to see him on some special teams. That's something South Carolina really doesn't have, that just bona fide star returner right now either. So if you look, you already have him. Maybe if you add a Quaymon Davis, potentially, he's a guy who would factor into that as well. But maybe a extra, that's maybe not the first. You're not sort of worried about return guy as being the like that. That's way down the list if you're South Carolina right now. But if he can do something like that, if a Quaymon Davis can do something like that, then that is some added value for you. And we know that Shane Beamer, based on his history, is going to be somebody that puts a lot of emphasis on special teams. Greg asked is Juju committed? Yes, he is. Greg, if you were a Gamecock Central subscriber, you would know that. So there. Sorry, man, I had to say that. I know you're against the paywalls, but Chris, let's close this thing out, man. Any final thoughts on the start of National Signing Day tomorrow?
Well, it's an interesting time. Obviously, it's a little different. Even, when this early signing period came about a couple cycles ago, we knew it was going to be different. This one's even more so. It's a little smaller than we're accustomed to. It's different with having a coaching change before the early signing period. And there's a couple things that, frankly, right now, we just don't know, that in terms of scheduling with the two guys you mentioned, Mikaya Davis and Byron Young. There's a couple guys out there that it's common to maybe go in and you don't really know what a guy's going to do, but you at least know maybe when and what's going on. And we don't really know that. So it's going to be interesting, but we'll probably get some answers at some point, and really excited to continue tracking it on GamecockCentral.com. So come join us, including Greg. Come on, man. Give us a try. I know you're against it. We'll turn you eventually.
I mean, you have free access till January 29th if you want, but we're going to make our next promo code Greg.
Yeah.
So anyway, yeah, there you go. So I wonder, Chris, if the information on when these guys are signing is a little bit harder to get because of the virtual aspect of everything right now. Like a lot of times the schools themselves would be having these big ceremonies.
Yeah.
And so if it was going into signing day, the school has having a ceremony at 9 a.m. So then you knew anybody that went to that school was going to sort of hopefully have a decision by then.
Yeah.
I think right now a lot of things are virtual. I've seen a lot of people are having like private ceremonies, or it's like friends and very close family, as opposed to having a gym full like you normally would have, and a real like in-person invite the media type deal. So I think it's a little bit less structured this year, but because of that, and that's made it a little bit more difficult to figure out. And then, like we said, man, some of these guys are just you envy their position as far as their opportunity, as far as being able to play major college football, but you don't envy the decision they're having to make and the circumstance that they're having to make. So it'll be an interesting day. We will at some point be going live on Wednesday, but until then, come check us out, GamecockCentral.com. We have a very strong insider report up that you can go read right now. And then we'll have plenty to go, maybe even later on the night, but certainly Wednesday throughout the day, National Signing Day, early signing day for the class of 2021. For Chris, I'm Wes. We'll see you